and welcome back to my channel. I am so happy to see you. Today I have another true crime ASMR video for you. Today we will be discussing the Jamison Family Disappearance. On October 9th, 2009, Bobby and Sherry Lynn Jamison, their 6-year-old daughter Madison, and her dog Maisie would load up into the family pickup truck to look at plots of land. The family was eager for a new beginning and to move out into the remote areas around Oklahoma's Red Oak Mountains. The family's truck would unfortunately be found abandoned 8 days later. The Jamisons were nowhere to be found, but had left some interesting things behind. So, today we will be diving into this case, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I will be adding this video to my true crime ASMR playlist, where you can find past and future videos in this series. Now, let's get into it. Bobby and Sherry Lynn Jamison and their daughter Madison lived in the town of Eufaula, Oklahoma. Now, as I said before, the family was really looking for a new start, and they had been considering buying a 40-acre plot and would live in a storage shed that they had already owned on the land. Bobby had gotten in a car accident in 2003, and it had left him with chronic back pain. Sherry Lynn suffered from bipolar disorder and had been prescribed medication, but it was reported that the medication just was not working. Many stating she suffered from bouts of severe depression. All of these things were really taking a toll on the marriage, and the marriage was said to be in a bad state. Prior to the events in 2009, Bobby and Sherry Lynn had gone to their local pastor and spoke about their beliefs that dark spirits had invaded their home and that an exorcism might be needed. This was because Madison had an imaginary friend named Emily. And Madison was openly speaking to this imaginary friend, as children do. But Sherry Lynn believed this Emily was an evil entity. Bobby had even asked the pastor if he knew of anywhere he could purchase special bullets to shoot a handful of spirits whom he said were living on the roof of the family's home. Bobby was also planning on trying to exorcise the home with the help of a satanic Bible that he had purchased. This kind of sounds like supernatural, honestly. But anyway, a friend of Sherry Lynn's told police that her and Sherry Lynn would conduct seances, and that Sherry Lynn took them much more seriously than she did. Sherry Lynn had also written in graffiti on her storage containers that someone had poisoned her black cats, and that witches do not like it when their cats are killed. Now, it wasn't just the Jamisons that thought their house was haunted. Family and friends believed it too. Sherry Lynn's best friend, Nikki Shenhold, had said that, in all seriousness, the house was haunted. I don't want to sound crazy, but whenever I went there, I felt a horrible presence. I would leave feeling so down and depressed. In July of 2009, Sherry Lynn's ex-husband from her first marriage took custody of their son, Colton. That following September, Sherry Lynn was hospitalized following a failed suicide attempt. During the custody hearing, her own son, Colton, would state that he would prefer to live with his dad, and stated that Sherry Lynn had seemed very depressed and that she often acted strangely, which must have been heartbreaking for her to hear that from her own son. Now, the Jamisons had packed up their truck and were ready to move on October 9th. And when they had asked Sherry Lynn's son, Colton, which, if anyone knew they were moving, you would assume he would, and he had no idea, which is just very odd. And it's even more odd that the Jamisons didn't really even have like a concrete yes, you can move. They had packed their entire lives that day and had no concrete place to go. They'd only met with the associate of the landowner. They didn't even meet with the landowner. And that day when the meeting was done, the family parked and went for a short walk for around 15 minutes. They would take their GPS unit and found a quiet spot on the hillside. After they returned to the vehicle, they drove a little further with the truck and would then leave it locked in the middle of a dirt track where they would vanish. The Oklahoma Red Oak Mountains are a small mountain range in southeastern Oklahoma. During their initial absence, none of their friends and family felt like any cause for concern. Bobby and Sherry were known to fall off the radar occasionally. I'm going to call her Sherry because Sherry Lynn is so long. But there's multiple sources where they call her Sherry, just so we're on par together. So, Sherry were known to fall off the radar occasionally. And Madison had already been pulled out of school, and this is all alleged by Sherry Lynn's mother, which, if my child just went missing with my grandchild, I would question things. But anyway, on Saturday, October 17th, 2009, hunters on dirt bikes ran across the Jamisons' abandoned truck in Latimer County. And this would be northwest of Red Oak. And they would call the police. They would report the vehicle. Initially, the police assumed the vehicle to have been stolen, as the report suggested the truck to have only been on the roadside for a few hours. Though later that day, the same hunter called back to confirm to police that he had seen it there abandoned for several days. It was about an hour's drive from the Jamisons' home in Eufaula. The Jamisons' family was nowhere to be seen, despite an extensive search of the area around the truck. Latimer County Sheriff Israel Buchamp at first thought the truck had been stolen, but soon realized something more serious had occurred. He launched a huge search and combed the area with over 400 volunteers, horses, mules, ATVs, 16 teams of cadaver dogs, and an unmanned drone. So they were really pulling out everything to look for this family. They found nothing during the searches. The cadaver dog teams repeatedly found scent near a nearby water tower, which was promptly drained, though no evidence concerning the missing family could be found. Police searched the truck and found Bobby and Sherry Lynn's cell phones, $32,000 in cash, maps, a GPS, Sherry Lynn's purse, wallets. In addition, they found the family's thirsty and malnourished dog, Maisie. The vehicle was in working order, had fuel, and hadn't been in an accident. The $32,000 in cash stuffed under the driver's seat was just a little confusing, as the family was on disability at the time, and they were just wondering why they had just $32K. And this wouldn't be for the land either. $32K wouldn't buy 40 acres of land. In the truck, investigators found an 11-page hate letter, and this was from Sherry Lynn to Bobby. So, in this letter, she said Bobby didn't care about Madison. She listed all the things she hated about Bobby, including that he was a loner, a hermit, and she wrote that she wanted a divorce. During the initial investigations, the police found no signs of a struggle, either in the vehicle or on the soft ground around the truck. There was no blood or broken glass, although rubbish was strewn around the truck. A search party was formed, and investigators combed through the wood and surrounding area looking for any trace of them, and they turned up nothing. And the case would remain cold until November 16th of 2013. Now, just 2.7 miles from where the truck was located, deer hunters discovered the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. They were in the Smokestack Hollow area of Panola Mountain. The location was extremely remote, and the 3 bodies were severely decomposed. The remains consisted of 3 skulls, several bones and bone fragments, the victim's shoes, and some scraps of clothing. Forensic testing confirmed 8 months later that the remains were Bobby, Sherry Lynn, and Madison. It had been 4 years since the Jamisons had vanished from the truck. When questioned why the initial searches had found nothing, despite their size, an assistant special agent would say falling leaves potentially obscured the bodies. It's very bizarre. And I included that in because the first thing I wondered was, how do you miss them? And you have 3 cadaver dogs. It's just very bizarre. Or not, they had 3 teams of cadaver dogs, and I don't know. Due to the extensive decomposition that occurred in 4 years since their disappearance, it was deemed impossible to determine a cause of death. However, one of the skulls of Bobby had a small hole that was initially suspected as being a bullet wound. Later, the police dropped this line of inquiry, but the hunters, they disagreed. The police would dive back into the case and found, and now they're just finding it. That's another thing. What are you doing? But anyway, they would uncover this bizarre video, and it was a security video that had been taken outside the family home the night they left. And they left in the night, by the way. But anyway, the police found surveillance video footage from outside the Jamisons' home. The video shows Bobby and Sherry Lynn walking back and forth around 20 times from their house to the truck. Just back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. And they looked like zombies. It looked like they were in this just trance. Sometimes they weren't even carrying anything at all. They were just going through the motions. At times they stopped and would stare at each other with these vacant looks on their faces. It's just very bizarre. The odd behavior in the security video suggests that drugs may have been involved, which to me, this is giving drugs. But anyway, they had thought that maybe with the severe depression and paranoia looming large over the family, they had a lot of trauma within the family. They had a lot of just pain and just a lot of trauma altogether. it's not hard to imagine that the house had a heavy feel to it. When police checked the phone records of the mobile phone in the truck, they found it had made an outgoing call to voicemail on November 12th, though it would have been locked inside the abandoned truck at the time the call was made. The autopsy of the Jamison family would give no leads. The bodies discovered were so badly decomposed, no soft tissue, and a lot of animal activity, that the cause of death was not determined. Now, this case remains unsolved. It remains unsolved to this day, still, and it has had multiple theories on what happened that day on October 9th, 2009. Police had stated that normally you can go through an investigation and you can just one by one start to eliminate certain scenarios, but they were not able to do that with this case. So, today we are going to break down these theories, and there is quite a few. The first theory would be murder-suicide. Sherry Lynn was known to keep a .22 caliber pistol that she carried with her in the truck. The coroner found a small hole in Bobby's skull that might have been from a bullet, but neither Sherry Lynn or Madison had any gunshot evidence. The gun has never been found, and if Sherry Lynn had indeed used the gun to kill her family, where is the weapon? Theory number 2 is that the Jamisons were members of a satanic cult, and this really came from, obviously, Bobby's stating of having a satanic Bible and a lot of the using of Ouija boards and stuff like that. But it also came from Sherry Lynn's mother, Connie Cockatan, who claimed that her daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter were on an Oklahoma cult hit list. And now they literally have no evidence of this besides her mom saying she read about Oklahoma and that cults happen there. So, next theory is a drug deal gone wrong, which I am more leaning towards. I'll tell my thoughts in the end, but the area where the family lived, as well as the area they were hopeful to move to, is well known for its drug activity, namely meth labs involving the drug methamphetamine. Bobby had recently reported someone in the local area for running one, so it's very likely that they were on a hit list, but not a cult hit list, a drug dealer's hit list. In the surveillance video where Bobby and Sherry were packing, the two also look thin, gaunt, and unwell, so drugs would also explain how their mind, like their well-being was at that time. It would also explain the large sum of money found in the Jamisons' truck, but I don't think a drug dealer would leave the money. That's the only thing with that. I don't think they would leave the money. Or maybe it was just to get them off the map and that's it. But anyway, drug abuse could explain the couple's erratic behavior. Another theory was that the Jamisons came upon illegal drug activity in their little adventure that an agreement to give him half the proceeds from selling a gas station he owned. Bob and his dad, Bob Sr., obviously, had owned this together, and they weren't splitting the proceeds together. Bob used to get Bobby to work at the gas station. Bob threatened the family, and there were also rumors he had connections to the Mexican mafia, which, if you want everything to just go under the map, those are the people you should call. But Bobby's father died 2 months after the family went missing in December 2009, at the age of 64. Bobby's uncle Jack Jamison and Bobby's dad said Bobby's dad was either in a hospital or resting at home at the time of the disappearance, and that he was a disturbed individual, but not capable of murder. So, that is the case of the Jamison family murders. Now, as always, I will conclude with my thoughts. Now, I believe this is drug-related, purely. I believe the couple were taking part in meth abuse. I think their hallucinations and paranoia were caused by not sleeping, which is a common side effect of methamphetamine use. That wasn't the only sign. Besides the paranoia, you have the isolation, hallucinations, thinking people are poisoning their cats, their daughter's imaginary friend is a demon, let alone they took her out of school. They were just working so hard to isolate themselves to the point where they were going to move to the woods and live in a shack. So, which I also believe the statement of her cats being poisoned is a big clue. My thoughts are that this could have been administered by someone in their drug world, for sure. But it also could have been done by either Sherry or Bobby. I think Bobby, if he were at fault, he might have found this letter of hate his wife had written prior to the joyride, and had poisoned his wife and daughter so they wouldn't leave him, and then would shoot himself, knowing where his wife's 22 would be. But the gun is missing, so I'm